Welcome to Books for Success. Today, we're delving into the wisdom within Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Tawwab. Discover how to build boundaries and ensure comfort in your relationships under the guidance of a professional therapist. You'll learn symptoms signaling a lack of healthy limits, why you start avoiding people you love, how childhood defines your limits, the 4 types of personal borders you need to honor. Before we begin, subscribe and ring the bell for notifications if you want to keep receiving the knowledge of book summaries about health, wealth, love, psychology, and much more. Don't be shy about dropping your book suggestions for us to summarize. Also, you can use this video as an audiobook summary. Let's grow and succeed together. The process of setting boundaries isn't pretty or easy. Conflicts with other people, time management problems, and the toxic influence of social media are issues people are discussing nowadays. These things bother them enough to visit a therapist for help. However, what stays behind the scenes is that their roots lie in the lack of boundaries. According to Nedra Tawwab, boundaries are mutual expectations that help you maintain mental and emotional well-being in your relationships. People often overlook these limits, as they don't see them as a link connecting all the issues in their relationships. For instance, if you can't tell your mother that you don't want to talk every day, you'll likely have the same problem with staying late at the office or constantly loaning money to your friend. Tawwab uncovers boundary violation, so you can finally understand why you feel unhappiness or resentment. Even though the term boundaries may seem to you as something related to limitations and walls, on the contrary, it will bring you freedom and comfort. Relationships with other people influence not only our lives but also our choices and how we feel daily. If you're wondering if you lack boundaries in your life, here are some signs to watch out for. Times when you avoid certain people because you think they will ask for something. Feeling guilty for saying no. Being too busy most of the time. Wishing you could disappear. Feeling tired and burned out. If at least a few appeal to you, it's time to revise your limitations. In the following chapters, you'll learn how to set clear boundaries and deal with problems arising on your life path. Setting limits is healthy for you. Complicated relationships with your family, friends, colleagues, or a love partner might signal that you have problems with your boundaries. What are they? Having healthy boundaries means you feel safe and comfortable saying no, accepting it from each other, and saying yes. There are multiple signs that your boundaries aren't healthy at the moment. Mental health is your most important indicator. It suffers when you or another person violates comfortable boundaries, leading to anxiety as a natural response to constant stress. Other symptoms are poor self-care. When you prioritize helping others, you neglect your own needs. People mistakenly believe self-care is egoistic, but you aren't a machine, you must recharge your battery. It isn't simply about a spa day or shopping. Instead, caring means paying attention to your own life and needs. Saying no to self-sacrifice is the best way to support yourself. Avoidance. Ignoring and cutting people off is a coping mechanism you unconsciously use when you can't deal with particular situations anymore. For instance, when you can't say no to your friend who repeatedly asks for your help, you don't answer the phone or pretend to be ill. Avoidance is a passive-aggressive way to say you are done. Resentment. It's a red flag when you start acting out of obligation to another person without joy. With time, your anger level will increase, bringing massive conflicts. You don't have to face irritation every time. Try to implement boundaries and ask for support to prevent the worsening of the relationship. Why is it so challenging to build boundaries? We bring the strategies we learned in childhood from our families to our adult life. So, if your family ignores limits and leaves them unspoken, you will likely have problems communicating your needs. On the other hand, for those whose parents respect healthy boundaries and take care of each other's comfort, it's natural to set limits with people. Boundaries are crucial at all ages, especially with children, as they learn expectations within a relationship. Learning to say no is not enough. Boundaries are multi-leveled, and you must understand where they start before setting them. Let's take a closer look at 3 major types. Porous. If you struggle with oversharing, codependency, and a tendency to please others, you might find it difficult to assert your boundaries. This situation could lead you to accept mistreatment and constantly seek external validation. An example is when you loan money to someone even though you can't afford it or help with babysitting despite already having plans. As a result, you feel anxious and depressed due to the inability to express your boundaries. Rigid. In contrast, this type means distancing from others and overusing no due to a fear of vulnerability and self-protection after a negative experience in the past. A person with rigid boundaries never shares, cuts people out, sets strict rules, and uses a harsh tone to prevent others from asking again. Healthy. This type requires clear communication and being explicit about your values and emotional, mental, and physical capacities. To set boundaries, you must communicate them and take action when required. Both steps are challenging, but this process is a part of your path. Verbal communication is essential as people have different expectations, and others can't read your thoughts based only on your body language. Try to be as explicit as possible when sharing your needs to prevent misinterpretation. A person with healthy boundaries can say no without apologizing when a situation brings discomfort, but they are also comfortable hearing no. Finally, uphold your words through your behavior. Without action, you won't show how serious you are about the discomfort. For instance, you have told your friends that you have a busy schedule and they need to respect the plans you agreed to beforehand. If they are late without informing you about it, you need to explain that it's a problem for you. You can say, "I want to spend time with you, but you didn't show up at the time we scheduled. And I warned you about my limits. I can't wait for you today, but we can find some time during the next week." It's crucial to show through your actions that you respect your time so they will also respect it. Examine all connections in your life. When you start setting boundaries with people, their responses can be disappointing. Some of the most typical are pushback. They may refuse the boundary you set with or without arguments. It can happen immediately or later. Testing limits. They look for flexibility in what you say. Ignorance. They keep crossing your boundaries as if nothing happened. Defensiveness. They try to accuse you instead. Ghosting. They disappear without explaining anything. Silent treatment. A passive-aggressive form of coping. Their communication style may switch to yes, no answers. To overcome these reactions, name them and explain how it makes you feel. Don't give up. Insist on your boundaries. Once you realize the importance of healthy boundaries, you can implement them in various aspects of life. Family. Parent-child relationships are very challenging when it comes to boundaries. Children love to test their parents' limits to see how far they can go. Parents neglect children's needs by ignoring their boundaries. For instance, if a child doesn't want to eat meat or refuses to communicate with a specific person, it's the parent's job to respect them and not force them to do things against their will. When parents decide to ignore them, kids feel lonely and struggle with boundaries as grown-ups. Work. Working more than 40 hours a week is a sign you lack boundaries. You may accuse your boss, but it's your responsibility to show porous boundaries with your work time, colleagues, and management. Work-life balance is significant for your mental well-being. Every person should be able to go on vacation, finish the workday on time, and relax at home when they are off work. Friendship. Friends are people you choose in your life, and you keep them around because they offer a feeling of ease and comfort. If so-called friends bring more drama to your life, you must reconsider if you have healthy boundaries with them. Romance. You tend to see your partner as a perfect match when falling in love. However, people often expect their partners to read their minds and face disappointment when it doesn't happen that way. So, learn to be honest and open with your significant other about your needs, which can change during major life transitions such as moving in together, getting married, or becoming parents. Why relationships might lead to anger and frustration. One of the reasons why you tolerate the violation of your limitations is a fear of rejection. The human mind produces worst-case scenarios even if they aren't likely to happen. These are intrusive thoughts that may bother you. Does it mean I am selfish? What if they think I don't love them? What if I lose this person? What if they are mad at me? However, you have no idea what's happening in other people's heads. So do not overthink, but build constructive communication. It doesn't mean you are asking for too much if they aren't ready to change their behavior for your comfort. More likely, they are comfortable using unhealthy strategies as it's easier for them to get what they want from you. In the previous chapters, we focused more on defining and setting boundaries, and now it's time to define different types. Physical boundaries. These limits consist of physical touch as well as space around you. Only you can define what is appropriate and set the limits. Examples of violations are forcing hugs and kisses, especially with kids. Physical abuse. Touching in a way that brings discomfort and showing affection in public. To honor your boundaries, start verbalizing them and being explicit about what you don't like. Sexual boundaries. Touching, making sexual jokes or comments, or engaging in sexual activities without verbal consent violates sexual boundaries. Don't hesitate to report sexual misconduct that you experience or witness. Intellectual boundaries. Everyone has a right to their own opinion. It is a violation if others start calling you names or yelling based on your expression. And conversely, respect others who don't share your views. Emotional boundaries. Invalidating others' feelings is inappropriate. For some people, sharing emotions is more complicated than for others. You can support such individuals by demonstrating empathy and minimizing judgment. Material boundaries. Your possessions belong only to you, and you have a right to decide if you want to share them or not. If your friend uses something longer than agreed or damages your item, you can ask them to pay for it. Time boundaries. People often don't respect time boundaries. For example, they call you too often, arrive too late or too early, and discuss the same problem multiple times. It's fine to tell them you are busy without apologizing and providing details. Clarify your needs in new relationships straight away. Communicating your boundaries can be complicated when you don't have experience or if it didn't work out last time. There are a few steps that are significant if you want to succeed. Start with a deep breath and make sure your voice isn't too loud or too quiet. When you explain your boundaries, try to be as straightforward as possible. There is no place for hints. Also, don't use jargon or complicated vocabulary. Be direct. Say what you expect in certain situations. If you mention specific words, define their meanings. Address any uncomfortable situation you face immediately. People often hesitate to speak up for themselves, as it's common to experience guilt, fear, sadness, or awkwardness. If you are looking for a way of setting boundaries without guilt, there is some bad news for you. It's impossible. You feel guilty because you believe talking about your needs is bad. At least, that's what people usually learn from their parents. It is natural to feel this way when you establish boundaries, but don't let your emotions overwhelm you. Remember that healthy boundaries are essential for your mental state, and you should respect others' limits too. Fear often comes from negative experiences. However, when you victimize yourself, you let the other person control you and your relationship. Sadness occurs when you think the other person can't handle the situation and your words hurt their feelings. Also, sometimes you are sad because you must explain your needs and the person doesn't understand them. When someone violates your boundaries, you need to follow 4 simple rules. React to it at the moment. Your first reaction is significant as it shows your limits. Even saying, "I don't like it," is better than silence. It signals that you aren't okay with the situation. Communicate your boundary again. For example, if someone shows up without calling, say that you see it as inappropriate behavior. If the situation occurs for the second time, tell the person how you feel and your expectations. Never let it slide. They will do it again. Try to practice these rules during the upcoming week. How childhood traumas affect you throughout your life. The most crucial relationship in your life is the one with yourself. Undoubtedly, your family, friends, and partner affect you, but your daily personal choices determine the quality of your life. Your self-boundaries imply how you manage your time and finances, self-care, the behavior you tolerate from others, and the people you allow in your life. Finances. Only loan money to someone if you can afford to lose it. You need to set limits for your monthly spending and savings. Following your planned budget is an aspect of long-term self-care. Time. Poor time management and a lack of discipline illustrate the need for self-boundaries. It's crucial to follow your schedule and delegate what you can. Self-care. This term doesn't mean you need to pamper yourself endlessly. Instead, you must ensure you care for your mind and body by spending time on self-nourishment. Practicing positive self-talk, spending time with energized people, and forgiving yourself are less obvious examples of the good treatment you should include in your daily routine. Thoughts. Negative thinking and inner dialogue full of criticism can have an adverse effect on your mental and emotional state. Try to practice mantras for self-kindness to bring comfort to yourself. People you allow in your life. Instead of getting upset about your friends being unreliable, it might be a good idea instead to ask yourself why you keep these people in your life instead. Remember, you choose a dating partner or people to be friends with. Setting boundaries is the initial stage of the process. To make them work long-term, you must face situations when someone violates them. You show how serious you are about your intentions by upholding your boundaries. However, this process also requires personal discipline, as you may have to confront your tendencies towards self-sabotage and procrastination. Sometimes, you may unintentionally disregard your boundaries, but when you notice you are in such a situation, you must return to your promise. Did you know? Ultimatums can be toxic and aggressive. However, you can use them to verbalize the consequences for someone who oversteps your boundaries. Conclusion. People establish healthy boundaries to ensure other parties respect their needs and expectations. Once you are heard and understood, you can feel comfortable in your relationships. On the other hand, you may feel overwhelmed, drained, and stressed when you lack boundaries, which may lead to increased chances of depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. People with these side effects often see a therapist without realizing the real problem lies with setting and keeping their boundaries. To set boundaries, you must verbalize and uphold them with further actions. Be very explicit and explain your expectations to the person and how they can reach them. People often negatively react to your attempts at setting limitations. Common reactions include pushback, testing limits, ignorance, defensiveness, ghosting, or silent treatment. Unfortunately, there is no way to overcome it without discomfort, so you must be ready to deal with it. Your approach to boundaries stems from your parents' behavior. Those whose parents didn't respect their children's needs have issues honoring their boundaries as adults. Also, boundaries can concern different spheres of your life, and you may have problems only with some of them. Physical boundaries, sexual boundaries, intellectual boundaries, emotional boundaries, material boundaries, and time boundaries. Building boundaries benefits your physical, emotional, and mental well-being. Explore your relationships to find what brings you discomfort. Then, communicate your needs to others and implement them through further actions. Try this. Start a journal where you can write down your boundaries and check your progress in implementing them. Find a comfortable number of phone calls and meetings per month with your family and stick to it. Finish your workday at the time you are supposed to finish. At first, you may feel worried about your tasks, but you will notice your growth of self-discipline and time management right when you implement this new boundary. Thanks for being part of our insightful voyage. If our summary piqued your interest, we encourage you to dive into the complete book for a deeper understanding. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more content if you're new here, and share it with others who might find it valuable. Keep on reading, discovering, and advancing until our next adventure.